The title for today's message that I chose several weeks ago was, What Does It Mean? And my idea was that I was going to talk about two different ways of handling that question. One is the way we assign meaning, often incorrectly. You know, somebody gives us a look and we say, well, they hate me, or they don't like this dress, and they're thinking about their coffee wasn't the way they wanted it. You know, it's just we assign meaning wrongly a lot. And then the second way I wanted to talk about it was we're all searching for meaning in our lives. It was going to be a great talk. You would have loved it, I promise. But that's actually not the talk I'm going to give today. Because there is trouble in our world. The week before last, there were 2 shootings of black men at the hands of police officers that were videoed. There was a massacre of police officers that were ambushed at a demonstration at a protest march in Dallas, my adopted home city. And this past week, we've had the horrible event with the truck in France, and then the coup takeover and hundreds killed in Turkey. And we just found out this morning another shooting of police officers in Baton Rouge. We know that 3 are presumed dead and 7 were shot. That's the early word we're hearing on that. We are in troubled times. What does it mean? That's what I want to talk about. I'm heartsick over it. I'm confused, and I'm sad, and I'm angry. All the things that you are, I am as well. Unity is a powerful spiritual tradition, and the teachings that we bring here about seeing God everywhere, about transforming our lives through the power of the law of mind action, has changed my life. It's incredibly powerful. There's no place I would rather be on a Sunday than in unity. But I will tell you, there's a weakness, or maybe something we don't do quite as well, and it's this: how do we answer suffering? What do we do when there is suffering in the world? Unity, there's a wonderful book by Mitch Horowitz. Is that his last name, Cindy? Okay, thank you. Called One Simple Idea. And it's sort of a history and a critique of the New Thought movement of which unity is a part. And this is one of the big ones, is that we don't have a good answer for suffering. As a matter of fact, sometimes we give these sort of glib little, bumper stickers like, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Is it? Would you say that to the lives of the families of those 5 officers that were killed in Dallas? Would you tell them their suffering is optional? Would you tell these African American communities that are racked with fear and pain over the loss of the lives of so many young men and women, would you tell them suffering is optional? It's not something we do well. So I'm coming to you in honesty and just saying that we don't have a deep resource here to go to in unity teaching on what to do in moments like this. So what I'm going to try to do today is share my own experience, but I'm going to go to a deep, deep teaching, and that is to the teachings of Jesus. When Jesus confronted suffering, we don't know how many of the stories that come to us about his life and his ministry were factual and how many were legend that came up around after him. We don't know, but there's one in particular that moves me deeply, that when his friend Lazarus died and he went to the home, even though the story says he raised him up from the dead, but in the moment he confronted the grief and the suffering of the family and friends of Lazarus. And what does the scripture tell us that Jesus did? Who remembers? Say it. Jesus wept. The shortest verse in the Bible. I have cried a lot in these last couple of weeks. Just got back from vacation. It was a trip of a lifetime. There are 5 of us who have been friends for 32 years. since I met Annie first day of freshman orientation at Oral Roberts University in 1984. And we've been friends all these years, and we took this trip. The last two of us turned 50, so we went to Greece. Originally, we were going to Turkey. We changed those plans, probably a good idea. Alden and I still flew through Istanbul. We landed in the Istanbul airport 5 days after the bombing there. We came back through the Istanbul airport 1 day before the coup attempt 2 days ago, when the airport was shut down again. We've been right next to it. It's a troubled time. But it's been odd to be out of the country during a lot of this. I was reading the paper every day, and I didn't post any of the pictures on Facebook. It didn't seem like an appropriate thing to show me, here I'm on the beach in Greece, when there's so much hurt. There's just a lot of hurt. But I came back, and I knew I was speaking today, and I've been talking to members of our staff and our ministry about what people have been saying in the community, and we got to talk. We have to have a real talk about what's happening, because people are hurting. So I'm not going to give you the glib bumper sticker unity slogan today. I'm going to share my heart. I'm going to share the practices that I know have worked for me in this time but I am groping. Do you get that? I am trying to find the way forward. I know there is one. I know that there is a way forward. But because my unity teachings are so deeply in my faith, that I know that good will come of all this. I just don't know how, and I don't know when, and I don't know what my part of that is. But I'm committed to it. So breathe as we do this today. From Luke chapter 10. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this, and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going by down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on olive oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. 'Look after him,' he said, 'and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have.' Jesus said, 'Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?' The expert in the law replied, 'The one who had mercy on him.' Jesus said, 'Go and do likewise.'" How many of you are familiar with this story? The Good Samaritan. There's a wonderful minister and author named Barbara Brown Taylor who I am very much a fan of, and she gave an incredible sermon on this parable at Riverside Church in New York 3 years ago, and I'd seen it before, and I went back and I watched it yesterday, and so some of the information I'm going to be bringing is scholarship that I'm borrowing from Reverend Barbara. Barbara says that if you love this story, chances are you don't really understand it. We don't have the context to understand what it meant to have the Samaritan be the hero of this story to a Jewish audience of that day. The Samaritans and the Jews hated each other. They were similar in some ways. They both groups followed Torah, but different versions. They both worshiped in a temple, but different temples. They both had strict laws on the way to live your life in order to be godly, and yet they disagreed with each other on who was doing it right. Sound like anything we hear today? Religions continue to draw lines and separate. And so, I want to give you a little bit more context. This was in Luke chapter 8. We don't know exactly the chronology of all this, but again, 2 chapters earlier, this is Luke 8:51. As time approached for him to be taken up to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem, and he sent messengers on ahead who went into a Samaritan village to get things ready for him. But the people there did not welcome him because he was heading for Jerusalem. When the disciples, James and John, saw this, they asked, "Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven to destroy them?" But Jesus turned and rebuked them. Then he and his disciples went to another village. Little context. John is considered the disciple of Jesus that was all about this love, this presence of divine love. And yet, John, when he was rebuked or turned away by the Samaritans in that village, he says to Jesus, "We should kill them all. Have God rain down fire to destroy them." Doesn't quite sound like love and inclusion, does it? Reverend Barbara Brown Taylor says, if you want to imagine the impact of this story, imagine the group of people that you would least want to depend upon when you're lying in a ditch half dead. And insert that name. The good white supremacist. The good ISIS member. The good bigot. Now you begin to understand that the impact of this parable to its audience would have been very hard to hear. Because they were conditioned to see the Samaritans as other, as wrong, as enemy. And so to have the Samaritan be the one who, when the ones that they revered and they loved, the priest and the Levite, they were the bad guys of the story by their indifference, not by their action. There's a whole lesson there too. But it was the bad guy, the other, the one who was not like us, who we have all of these judgments and thoughts about, they're the ones who showed mercy. This is a story, and this is a teaching of radical inclusion. And this is what I believe. I believe that Jesus was a non-dual teacher in a dualistic faith. In dualism, we understand that there's God and there's not God. In unity, we are non-dualistic as well. We say that there is no not God. That's a terrible sentence for all you English teachers out there. I apologize. I don't know another way to say it. There is only one presence, one power, one life, one love, one mind, God. That's what our name means. God is all. And that is what this parable is trying to show us about life on this planet with other people. There is no other. You are my sister. You are my brother. Even though you may hate me and persecute me, Reverend Jean Marie gave a beautiful talk last week, and she reminded us of another beautiful teaching of Jesus, that we are to love our enemies. He said, even the tax collectors love their family. I know, tax collectors. That one's still valid and current, isn't it? But to be called to love our enemy, radical inclusion. But when we get pushed, when we have violence visit us, when we receive bigotry and hatred, we tend to otherize. We want to have some againstness. And it's natural. In our evolution as a species, this is a natural thing to find those ones around us who are safe, that will protect our young, that will protect our resources. So we had to be able, at earlier stages in our development, we had to be able to determine who was for us and who was against us. Very useful. And when we are stressed, when we are challenged in a really big way, when we are in fear, And when we are in pain, we often revert back to older ideas and older ways of being. And so when we're hurting and when we're scared, we want to find somebody to make them the cause and find some way to push it away from us. This is what we do. And Jesus said, no. That is not the way forward. We are in a time of great pain and struggle. People are comparing it to 1968, the presidential year. Then there was a lot of protests and assassinations. There were other times, the 1930s in Europe, that led to the rise of fascism. The 1890s in America. Other times in history where there was a lot of violence and upheaval and change and fear and pain and suffering. And it does not feel good to be going through one of those times. When Gary called me over to the piano before the service, he said, there's been another shooting. My heart just sank. I thought, no, I can't do, no. And here we are in this time. And what does it mean for someone who is committed to a positive and practical and progressive faith? What does it mean to confront such violence and pain and suffering? For this next part of the talk, I'm going to invite you to continue to breathe, and please save your emails to later. This is something that I think a lot of people would rather I not talk about, but I feel like I have to. I feel like I'm called to, and I want you to know that I have sought much wise counsel on how to approach this, and I'm going to do my best. 3 words: Black Lives Matter. Powerful. To many, it is a call to understanding of pain and injustice that has been suffered in a culture for centuries. And some hear it as racist and exclusive. And so some want to say, no, all lives matter. So this is controversial. Our dear friend Cindy Wigglesworth, who's sitting on the front row, who is a huge support to me in many ways. But she wrote a beautiful piece this past the week. When did you write it? Last week? Yeah. About this particular issue for Huffington Post. You can find it there. We should probably post a link on our website. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece. And I'm going to quote some of what Cindy shared in that article. But there is she shared that there's this idea that there's an implied word with Black Lives Matter. And some hear it as only. And that is not what that means. It doesn't mean only Black Lives Matter. There is a word that is implied, and it's too. T-O-O, Black Lives Matter too. And Cindy has 4 points in her article. She says, first, the reality. We are in the same boat, and our fate is tied together. And yes, we sit on different seats on the boat. The same boat. We are on this same planet, in this country, in this experience of being human together. The world is getting smaller and we cannot hide. We must get along. And, this is the part we have to hear, different seats equal different embodied realities, leading to different perspectives. That we're saying that the experience of one group of people in our country, in our church, is different than that of others. And that's threatening to some. She also says we must have a goal to give and receive loving kindness if we're going to have a good life. The third is we need a path, wisdom and compassion, self-awareness and other awareness, empathy, prayer and skillful loving action. And fourth, grace. We need the grace of forgiveness from each other, the grace of self-forgiveness, the grace of guidance, and the love of God, or the higher power of your own understanding. We want to otherize. It's what we do when we're hurt. We want to push it away There were these 2 shootings by police people the week before last. Then there were the shootings of police. And just between services, somebody said, you were one-sided in what you said today. I don't mean to be. I'm not trying to be. But that's what we do, you see, is that we want to just see one side so it's more comfortable than to be in this space of trying to stand in another person's experience. This has come closer to my home than maybe some of yours, and not as close as in many of your homes. My partner adopted our son, Travis, at birth. He was the one that cut the cord. Travis, we don't know a lot about we know who his biological mother is. We don't know about his parentage, but we know that he's biracial. And we've done the DNA test on genealogy.com, and he wanted to do that. And he found out that 50% of his genes come from the continent of Africa. He is a handsome, gentle, beautiful young black man. And we love him. Travis is a good kid. Not particularly, academically motivated. Is that a good way to say that? But he's a good kid, and he's bright. And I've been encouraging him to write, and he shared 9 chapters of a novel with me the other day. Some of them were 2 paragraphs, but that's okay. He's gifted. A couple of weeks ago, I don't know why, he decided this was a good idea, but he decided to go for a jog at 2 in the morning. And I talked to him between service. His dad told him I was going to share this story, and he asked me to kind of modify the way I shared this. But we didn't know where he was. Alden heard the door open, and we were awake, and he came home, and we were scared, obviously. And we said, what were you doing? He said, well, I had all this energy. I just need to go run. One of the most painful conversations to tell a beautiful, innocent, really 17-year-old young man, you can't do that. You can't do that. I wanted to share, Travis actually asked me to share with you that we have a constable who patrols our neighborhood that the neighborhood association has paid, and he did stop Travis. And Travis explained that he lives right up the street, and the guy said, okay. And so Travis wanted me to let you know there are good cops. There absolutely are. I read something yesterday. It was very inspiring to me. Another example of a good cop. There's a Dallas undercover officer who was at the protest in Dallas the night of the shooting. I had friends that were there too. And they told me it was a very peaceful protest until the shooting began. But this officer who was undercover, and so his face was not revealed, and he doesn't have his name, but he spoke with his face obscured on Thursday morning this week at one of the memorial services for one of the fallen officers, his dear friend, a 27-year-old police officer in Dallas who was killed. And this is what this undercover officer shared at the memorial on Thursday. Quote, "To those protesters who cried out Thursday night to my team as we rushed to El Centro to help out, how does it feel to be the ones hunted now? I say to you, I'm sorry. I'm so very sorry that you felt as if your voice, your opinion, and your life did not matter to us. I am sorry for the misdeeds and the wrongs of the few in my profession over the years that have caused and created this distrust, fear, and anger towards law enforcement. We cannot fight the criminals and also the people we have sworn to protect. You do matter to me." I can't imagine what must have been going through his heart and mind to see his comrades shot. And I want to say that many of the protesters also helped the police officers in that situation. There was the best and the worst of humanity in that moment, as there often is. But this officer who was confronted with some of the ugliness that was coming from pain from the protesters, how does it feel to be hunted now? And his response is, I'm sorry. That's what we have to get to. There is no way to heal this while we're making the other side wrong. No way. Never. What we have to do is be able to empathize, to step into it, to ask questions about what is this pain you're telling me about. Cindy goes on in her article to say this. I thought it was particularly good. She was talking about that often whites feel attacked in some way, and particularly white men. But she says, I think our too easy attack on whites who don't practice politically correct language, and especially white males, creates a dangerous counter-reaction of whites lashing out to black. I want to listen to their pain and love the white guys too. And I'm very brokenhearted for the systematic injustice that Black Lives Matter points out. I want to listen to their pain. I want solutions that provide social justice for all. Listen to the pain. So how do we go forward? With efforts, good hearts, and tons of forgiveness. You're such a good writer, my friend Cindy. Deep self-control is needed to not fire off harsh words that make things worse. Softening the edges of my beliefs is needed to hear people better. Feeling the heart of the other is an easier place to start than in our beliefs. Feel their feelings, experience their pain, and try to see their experience without my usual filters. Empathy. To be able to see that people are hurting, and you probably heard this, but hurt people hurt people. And as long as we are blaming either side, any side, all sides, when there is blame, there is no empathy, there is no healing. I talked to my friend Tracy Brown, who is a wonderful author and a practitioner of Science of Mind, which is a sister teaching to Unity, and she spoke at Laney's in my community, my old community, in Laney's community in Dallas last week, and she gave me some good advice. And she's a diversity expert and teaches in many settings, but she said that this term allies has been used a lot. Like even if you're not of a certain oppressed class, you can still be an ally and work for healing. But she said she doesn't even use it really much anymore because even though Tracy is black, she was working as an ally for LGBT issues, and then she realized, I'm not an ally. That separates me in some way. I'm doing this because of the world I want to create. And those of us who are not African American, I'm inviting us to step into the healing of racism in our nation. And I know that African Americans are not the only class that receives it, but that's what we're talking about today. Black Lives Matter. To not be an ally that kind of separates me, the white guy, going to help the poor black people. No. I want to create a world where this doesn't happen. Yes. For me. So I need to close. I can't leave you here. What I want you to know is this. There is hope. And we cannot lose hope. I love the song. I will rise 1,000 times. Do you believe that the healing of violence and separation in our culture is possible? Yes. Then we're fine. We're going to find a way. If you believe that, and if you're willing to step into it with your heart open, with your ears open, willing to listen, willing to have a conversation, we're going to start something. We don't know. We're waiting for Howard to come back, but we're going to create some sort of a dialogue. Cindy had a great title for it, Healing the Heart of America. We're going to stay tuned. If this is calling to you, step up. And that's what I want to end with this. You're called to be bigger than you are right now, and we need it. Can't you see how much our world needs us all to be better, to be higher, to be more loving, to be more forgiving, to be more inspirational to our kids? You're needed. My favorite Bible verse right now, Romans 8:18 and 19. I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. And this is the part I really want you to hear. For the creation waits in eager anticipation for the children of God to be revealed. That's you. and that's me. Everything is waiting for us to step into our true selves, to be bigger, to be more loving, to be the sons and daughters of God that we are. God bless you. In a moment, baskets will be passed containing cards. And on those cards will be faces and names of people who have lost their lives through violence in the last year or so. These are people of diverse race and age and gender and religion and sexual orientation. And I want you to know that the 5 officers from Dallas are included. You may not get a card. You may think that, all the cards look the same. They don't. They're all very diverse. I just want to say that too, to the gentleman who I spoke with between the services. To be for black people being safe in their neighborhoods and not feeling scrutinized and afraid of officers, that does not mean that I am not for police officers. That we don't have to be one or the other. We can be, I am for all, being the best, the children of God that they are. There are no perpetrators included in these pictures. There are no people who have taken other lives. I ask you to not sort through the basket as it comes down your aisle. Just take one, and it'll be the right one. It'll be the right one. There are about 50 different faces named throughout the cards. Lainey will be singing as the baskets are passed. And when you receive your card, as we're waiting for everyone to receive the card, I just invite you to simply gaze at the person that you're holding. See them as a son and daughter of God. Open your heart.
The power of prayer. Stand beside me, knowing the truth, and it is healing me. The power of prayer, the path to freedom. The light of the Spirit is revealing me. Pray for me. I will pray for you. Together we greater than we knew. The power of prayer. Stand beside me, knowing the truth, and it is healing me. The power of prayer. The path to freedom, the light of the Spirit is revealing me. Pray for me. I will pray for you. Together
Does everyone have one? Okay, so we'll just continue to pass those out. These are faces and names of sons and daughters of God. You don't have to know their story. Your task right now is to simply see the light of God in their face, in their eyes. Our ushers are getting the cards just to the final remaining few. Does everyone have one? Okay. Let's go to prayer. God, help us. Help us, Holy Spirit, to be the sons and daughters of God that you have created and called us to be. Help us, God, to be that light that Jesus said we are, the city set on the hill. Help us to speak words of love. Help us to take actions of love, to take steps of love. Help us, God, to honor these brothers and sisters who have suffered and died. May their lives and their deaths not be in vain. May they call us to be greater, to speak up for peace, for truth, for forgiveness, for healing, for reconciliation. Help us, God. Help us to be the light of God that we know that we are. May we become a center of healing, a place of healing. Right now, if you are willing to be a part of that healing, if you are willing to take a stand that these folks did not die in vain, I invite you to rise as you're able. And on the back of the card, there's a statement that we are going to speak together. Together. I see the light of God in you. I will not forget you. I will be a place of healing and change in your honor. May we all know God's peace. Let your light shine through me in places where it's hard to see, where love is dim and hearts and eyes are blind. Oh God, let me shine. This is our prayer, God. Let your light shine through me today, God. In places where it's hard to see, where love is dim and hearts and eyes are blind. Oh God, let me shine. Just sing that line with us. Let me shine. Let me shine. Let me be a place of healing, God, today, right where I am. Let me shine. Let me be the way of healing. Let me be it, Lord. Let me shine today, right where I am, in my family. Let me shine. Your light, God, shine through me. Shine through me. Let me shine. And so it is. Amen.